Thank you so much, Usman, for that great remark. And next, we're going to move on to the next speaker, who is the keynote speaker, speech on the importance of mainstreaming gender perspective in writing. So she's going to deliver this speech. That is Honorable Halimatou Dibba.
Sorry. Was a lecturer at the UTG. Those of us who are from the School of Arts and Sciences must have, at least at one point or the other, had a class with her. And when you sit with her and discuss in details, you get to understand that whenever she talks, there is that spirit of being African in her. Whatever she does, she wants to make sure that she promotes African values and what we all desire. And her coming here today in the book launch of Whispers from a Wounded Land is not an accident, because we understand the entire book here tries to advocate for how can we Africanize ourselves, knowing our history as Africans and what could be done to also emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And today she serves as a commissioner at the National Human Rights Commission. Again, a commission that is very much concerned about human rights. And if we talk about Africanism, again, we cannot put human rights in a different stage as well. So, Ms. Dibba, we are indeed honored to have you today in this book launch, and we look forward to drinking from your pool of wisdom as much as possible.
Good evening, everyone. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. So I'll try to, because since we're behind time, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I'm looking at the topic that I've been tasked to address. That is the importance of mainstreaming gender perspectives in writing. I know that this is a topic that when we speak of mainstreaming gender, we generally speak of mapping out ways that consider the interests and concerns of both men and women. So when we talk about mainstreaming gender, we talk about equality between men and women in all sectors. And when I go into my statement, you would forgive me though, however, because I like to acknowledge the reality that women all over the world in mainstreaming gender in any field is about empowering women in particular and girls to reach their full potentials and to earn the same opportunities as men and boys. Not to say that men are not to be considered, but if we contextualize it, when I speak in the presence of this gathering today, a gathering that has convened to celebrate a young Gambian lady, I sing to the choir, I think, looking at your presence as we have all gathered to acknowledge her potential, her gift of telling stories of so many that transcend borders, transcends ages. So while I acknowledge that men and boys too need to be empowered to reach their full potential, to get opportunities in order to thrive, when I speak of gender mainstreaming today, I lay emphasis on the need to empower women and girls. I lay emphasis on women and girls for ours. It's a country where patriarchy is so tightly woven in the fabric of our societies, where the systemic marginalization of women and girls is so deeply rooted and unfortunately normalized that addressing it is some sort of abomination. In a country where women constitute 51% of the population, and this figure still stays, considering the recent statistics that we have, most of whom are youth, again, the census that we had, saying that most of the population is youth, a country where girls have for several years outnumbered and outperformed boys in junior and senior secondary school leaving certificate examinations. Women form less than 2% of cabinet, less than 10% of elected members in parliament, and far lesser percentages in the judiciary. And a small percentage of this figure forms part of the formal sector, work sector. So when we take a moment to let these figures, these statistics sink in, when we in our own ways try to decipher these statistics in our own ways, whatever those ways are, we will come to the same conclusion that indeed women and girls are marginalized in this country, whether through policy, social norms, beliefs, myths, you name it. We know deep down that there are way too many cracks in society where women and girls are falling off. It is quite disheartening when this country is engaged in debates regarding women and girls. It is worrisome that even the youth that we have so much hope in take the conversations to very, very concerning tracks. In this room today, in celebrating this young lady, however, one of our points of reflection should be that the fact that behind every single woman and girl who has fallen through the cracks that this society has created through marginalization or patriarchy, behind every woman, behind every girl is a story that needs to be written, a story that needs to be told. Stories of abuse, stories of child marriage, stories of patriarchy where they had to give up their education because their brothers had to be prioritized. Stories of giving up their dreams of leadership because society did not deem them fit. Stories of sexual and gender-based violence, violence meted on them by trusted family members or men in positions of power, giving up their dream jobs because their bodies were laid as collateral. Stories of settling for the barest minimum because they are not entitled to land or other means of financial sustenance. These stories need to be told, these stories need to be written, and they need to be heard at all levels, at the family level, community, government, and international level. This is where the power of writing lies. This is why we need to mainstream gender in writing, remembering that every story is different. Every story has its own dynamics rooted in different family, societal, and institutional structures. When we tell these stories in writing, like Harry has done, whether through documenting true stories, creating fictional characters, poetry, dramas, articles for publication, or other forms of writing, or laying down our beautiful African history, we are lending voices to millions of girls and women around the world, and in particular in Africa and the Gambia. And on the other hand, carrying the voices of African women and girls, Gambian women and girls in particular, to millions all over the world. We raise the realities of these women and girls to diverse audiences and readers, including policymakers, grassroots leaders, religious and other leaders. Most significantly, we are telling women and girls all over the world, women and girls in Africa, women and girls in the Gambia in particular, that their stories resonate, encouraging them to strive on, to be relentless, to seek support, to empower each other, and most significantly, like the stories of the characters in these stories, to speak up, to break barriers, like our mothers, our grandmothers have done. So to every writer in this room, whether you write fiction, whether you write nonfiction, poetry, publication, for whatever your theme is, whatever the morale behind your story, whether it's historic or futuristic, you have a duty to tell these stories. A duty not to tell them passively or as stories of vulnerability or weakness, because women are everything but weak or vulnerable by virtue of their gender, but rather they are marginalized by virtue of their gender. So when you tell these stories, do not portray them as characters who always need to be saved, but to embody these women and girls graciously, who, if not for marginalization, would steer the affairs of their families, this country, and Africa at large with reverence and success. A duty to highlight their plights, emphasize their struggles, drive their dreams and aspirations, amplify their voices, highlight the somberness of those who succumbed, and of course, trumpet their triumphs. A duty to lay out their realities as individual stories that manifest systemic barriers that need to be broken collectively. In the Gambia, these are everyday stories of our sisters, aunties, mothers, grandmothers, neighbors. Everyday stories of superheroes who are on a daily basis or who on a daily basis weather this storm for themselves and their families. When we write these stories, we lay out history for the present and future generations to reflect on and for legacies to live on, to create the avenue to hold people in positions of power to accountability. You acknowledge the efforts of women and girls in championing change despite these barriers. You stamp those strong shoulders we all stand on. And most significantly, you foster the culture of speaking up. You embolden young readers to strive on, inspiring them not to relent, and in that, you stop non-recurrence. Nothing beats this in our society, where the culture of silence and the infamous sutura culture is unfortunately so normalized. That is exactly what Harry has done with this book, a collection of poems that touch on different aspects of life in Africa, the misfortunes, but the riches that we unfortunately can barely reach. When I first spoke to Harry on the phone, I heard a very soft, tender voice on the other side of the phone, a voice you had to keenly listen to pick out the words, a voice that some might mistakenly even dub timid. A couple of days later, she came to my office to drop a copy of the book, Whispers from a Wounded Land, The Voice of Mother Africa. And when she walked in, the voice matched the physique. Slender, shy, young lady with a very calm demeanor. Mind you, I said physique because I would not say personality, I would not say person. Because this calm, soft, shy young lady would be considered a quiet person, especially in our society. But she's not quiet, in my opinion. She's an outstandingly vocal, outspoken young lady by every sense of the word, as a poet, as an author. Behind this shy, soft voice is a powerful, strong voice. A strong, powerful voice she has so craftily used in this book, expressing an array of emotions of frustration, pride, uncertainty, hope, perseverance, pride in some instances, and even anger in other instances. A voice that transcends tribes, borders, and generations. The expression of frustration over underperformance, over underperforming leaders, never-ending corruption, and systemic marginalization are far too familiar to millions of young Africans, particularly young African women. She re-echoes the outcries that transcend generations, borders, tribes, and communities across the continent. Reading through some of the poems where she laments the unbearable states of affairs in the African continent, you cannot help but pause, especially as a middle-aged African woman myself. These are the words that resonate through every stage of our lives. For we too have great stages, penned poems written to lead us, march the streets, and unfortunately lost far too many lives decrying these same woes. We too have lamented the undeniable and unmatched riches of the African continent. Riches majority of her continent, unfortunately, can never reach. To see a young lady pen the same frustrations of bearing the same brunt of hopelessness, and in some instances, anger towards broken systems that marginalize and continuously fail to acknowledge the power and ability of women, youth, and children across the continent. So to the young ladies in this room today, we have to tell majority of these stories. So much power lies with us. To break the barriers of institutionalized marginalization and sociocultural myths, we need to own the narrative. We need to replace current misconceptions with facts based on real life stories. The change we yearn so much is embedded in our voices. Voices we need to amplify ourselves through factual stories that showcase our realities, that drive the change we so much yearn for, that reflect the change we want to see now. Stories that ensure non-recurrence of injustices and unfair treatments our mothers, grandmothers, and forefathers endured. Remember most especially to tell the stories with great consideration for the different dynamics of every individual behind a story. the concept of intersectionality, that not every woman or girl has the opportunity to even share their story or even be seen. Because the barriers they face are compounded by other difficulties, such as disabilities, cultural dynamics, rural life, and the list goes on. This, I acknowledge, is and will not be easy, but we need to own our own stories and the stories of those left far behind. So, like Harry, grab a pen yourselves, or should I say keypads in this day and age, to write the article you're thinking of, the poem, the book, the play, the skit, to tell your story, or the stories of those you hear and see so clearly, because yes, we see each other. To every young lady here, you do not have to be the writer to tell your story. Share them in a way you are comfortable with, through any platform. Your dreams and aspirations, your worries, your wishes, your causes for change, your wins, your triumphs, your successes. Keep writing in the diary you have kept for so long. Keep chatting with friends. Build that idea up to a story to be written, or turn it into even a school project, a thesis, or whatever your craft is. In conclusion, I want to acknowledge everyone's presence and to lay emphasis on the power of numbers, to carry these women along, as we have shown up here today to support Harry, such a talented and skilled young lady. Let us always show up for every young person in the pursuit of their dreams through their journeys in mastering their respective crafts. Showing up in this sense does not always have to be through a book launch, a graduation ceremony, or other celebrations of milestones. Showing up also means breaking the cycle of patriarchy in our society. Showing up means leaving no one behind in our various strives as drivers of change, especially those marginalized, not only based on their gender, but additionally because of their disabilities, because they belong to certain socio-cultural minorities, because they have mental health issues, a problem that is so real in our country today, and even because they have other forms of addictions or struggles that they're going through, or even to the most basic, show up, even if it has to do with their personal traits. And when you show up to them, or when you show up for them, listen to them. Listen to them keenly, be respectful, and only tell their stories when they're ready. So to the writers, the duty lies on you, but to everyone else, we have stories to carry than mainstream gender, especially for women and girls in this country. Thank you.
Every single point of what he had said here today talks about gender mainstreaming and how we can also empower women and girls to be able to accomplish their desires as well. And I think one point that stood out is the fact that, like you're saying, we're talking about stories of human beings, but stories of girls and women in the Gambia that deserves to be told. And I think this is a part we have to always take note of, that people like Harry, like any other girl we have out there, they have a skill that they can utilize to be able to make something greater.
Yeah, that's right. And to be honest, recently, let me just say, these past 2 years, I'm very impressed. I'm not leaving the men behind, but to be honest, I'm very impressed with my fellow women because years back, people were like, women were not taking in charge. Let's say, okay, women were not participating. But recently, you can see a lot of women in different areas, in the media, in technology, and women also are writing. So I think it's high time for us to be motivated as a woman or as a youth in order to take part and take in charge as well.
Interesting. And the most interesting part from all those Gambians we have currently writing is the fact that they do not shy away from exposing their skills and talent. But there is a question mark somewhere as to how many Gambians are willing to support these young writers. If they are writing books but they are not being empowered, we are not buying their books to read them, their ideas will go back to the drains of the gutters. And there is a need for us to at least make sure that these books that they are writing down, we empower them by buying this book, read their stories, and also empathize with them to achieve these desires as much as possible.
So I think it's high time we start doing that because some people also don't believe in reading. You know, sometimes if you just do book launching, okay, let's say today we are launching the book of Harry. Okay, it's a great day. Okay, everybody's happy. But as time goes on, you just buy the book and you leave it there. You're not even bother to read to know what is in the book. So I believe it is important also we read a lot, because the more you read, the more you will be able to be a better writer.
Sure.
So next on the program guide, we're gonna have something very extraordinary. And if I said extraordinary, Seema, do you know that right?
I definitely do.
Okay.
But before we call on the next person on the itinerary, I think I'm seeing important individuals amongst us that also need to be recognized. And I think we have to take this opportunity to also welcome and also acknowledge the presence of all family members of Hariba who are here today to support this accomplishment. I've also been seeing lecturers from the university who are also in our midst. I can see Mr. Karfa over there. At one time, our psychology lecturer with Madam Kantara. I think also see Mr. Ebere somewhere. I'm not sure if he's anywhere hiding. Okay, and Dr. Solomon as well. So you being here today is a sign that you are willing to empower your students at the university, which Harry is part of, and we're so much gratified to have you in our midst today. Thank you all for coming, and we look forward to having you in more of this kind of occasions. Let's have our next activity, Kajit.
All right. Okay. So next on the program guide, we're going to have something nice, as I said, and it's going to be poetry. So I know some of you like poetry because I do. I love poetry. In fact, I'm a poet. So, and the poet we're going to have today is going to be Juka Ba. So is Juka here?
Assalamualaikum. Greetings to you all here. There's a little bit change of plan, I must confess. But I hope it goes well, because this was not the initial piece to give out the words. I hope it goes well. This piece is a piece of empowerment for both young and elderly. The name Guru meaning man in Wolof and Guru Scrambler is sub Guru meaning a person. See, be a man is easy, but embark on the journey of hustling because you're expected to be hustling like in a hustle. Then stand firm and wait for your needs and not always be a beggar. See, your health and strength means to fight your future, so make it brighter. That's all advice of this one right there. Kon, takkan sendika kurgulun di kampuri kursi kurgabai. Lo tek mutegi lo no di mutaga buntah natagale ni lo wai jos yo buntah hodip yo bukomo yo bale walaupun nang perantah yo. Si pemilihan lo neh tau yo bala bai wan neh mo la tek kadile muktu lo bale. Kumu kumu ke hikna si ko wala banyak tagale. Wudi ko ko jarte na mo mo lo bai takaro tele kurgu. Gurguru tenyefe mana harse tanki tufe. Hei bala ko. Takat na hamne lekan na hawo de yo mutta fasbai da tafe. Gurguru. Dikan ni gurguru wai jigin jafe. Takat am no jigin man guru. Semaya benar sih. Amu meti meti musto bayo watai kontriti fish miyai. Dito in sekuri mai. Kunjuru na. Shilo muti yego gurguru. Believe in you. Have faith. Keep the race. Don't rest. Because one day you shall survive the race. Gurguru. Thank you. Okay, fine. I thank you. That is specially dedicated to Honorable Sidi Jada. Just to tell him the spoken word poets in this country are really doing so well when it comes to in our own indigenous language. I don't call him local language. I call him indigenous language. Right. So we get this for who? See, life is who? I draw guidance to overcome struggle in life. Look into my eyes and tell me I will die, then I will tell you it's a lie. Because what that I feel is internal self for my life. But in my heart, you talk to us. Struggling to breathe like my inner self is about to commit suicide for it's too much to let it outside for who? It's going to sleep in me aside. Listen to my pains and see the foresight. Because everything I do is wasted. Everything I do is wasted. Sometimes I feel like to throw myself beside the soul and spend 1,000 nights. Even if it dangerous may be tight. I don't mind. I don't mind. After listening to the blows of the waves, feeling one piece, I feel existing hold inside. With million holes, I'm moving down to the sunset. Plan ahead for longer days, reflect on the goals that I set for myself, inspire myself, and find that inner self that only room is for only suicide, and feel the standard. to let go everything in the building life. It's never late. It's never late to wake up and realize, why am I alive? Why am I on bed? And what can I do for myself? So I've got to believe the word for living in order to restore the velocity. But life is optimism. Witnessing deal from the mind is a strong blessing that can be wasted. I need to take a step soonest in order to recover the lost time, go for good, and ready to face the test. Because it's life, I need to sweat for my best. Because the dog will die waiting for food in his nest. This is a strong promise that I keep to my neck. I know it's hard, but I won't let go for now. Because the food that might consume so cheap to let go. So I won't let go. I won't let go. See, life is an open desert with limited resources to cover its life. So create your own roof before you get lost in the end of life. Be wise when you can influence you to let go. But never stand by you till you blow. And when you make it, they'll be forced to reach your home. When you make it, they'll be forced to reach your home. So what the difference now? Because it's never late to know. It's never late to know. The very taste of a cake that you bake for yourself. Because only then you will realize. Only then you will realize what satisfaction really means. Thank you.